The unlikely encounter. Detective Rachel Stone had always been able to cover her tracks. For years, she had secretly been on the payroll of a dangerous crime syndicate. But today, everything changed. In the midst of a routine bust, her operation is compromised when a trusted informant turns out to be a double agent. The word spreads quickly that someone high up in the force is feeding information to the criminals. Suspicion starts to swirl around her. But Rachel remains calm, confident her secrets would never come to light. Little does she know, her downfall begins the moment she walks into court for what she thinks is just another routine hearing. A glimpse of the evidence. Rachel is summoned to the courtroom, unaware that her most recent crime has already been exposed. As she steps into the witness box, the air is thick with tension. The defense attorney begins laying out the evidence of her corruption. Bank statements, wiretaps, and even photos of her meeting with known criminals. Rachel's hands start to tremble as she watches her own downfall unfold before her eyes. But her biggest shock comes when the judge, a man known for his cold demeanor and unwavering commitment to justice, begins asking pointed questions. He seems to know more about her than she anticipated, and Rachel begins to feel trapped. The judge is unraveling. Judge Malcolm Daniels is no stranger to corruption, having seen it firsthand in his years on the bench. However, when he sees the evidence against Rachel, something inside him snaps. He leans forward, his eyes narrowing as he addresses the courtroom. He has seen enough. With a razor-sharp focus, he begins unraveling Rachel's web of lies. Each revelation is more damning than the last, and the courtroom starts to buzz with disbelief. Rachel, usually composed, begins to crack under the pressure. Her confident facade slips as her entire career teeters on the brink of destruction. The moment of truth. As the case against Rachel intensifies, she begins to realize the extent of the trap she's fallen into. The judge's voice echoes in her ears, each word a blow to her reputation and future. She had never expected her life to crumble so quickly, especially not in such a public spectacle. With the eyes of the entire courtroom on her, she struggles to maintain her composure, but deep down, she knows her time has run out. The moment of truth arrives as the judge declares that the next session will reveal the final piece of evidence, proof of Rachel's involvement in a high-profile murder. Rachel braces for the storm that's about to engulf her. This is a gripping beginning, with each chapter setting the stage for Rachel's eventual downfall. Each chapter should keep ramping up the stakes, with the judge, the courtroom drama, and Rachel's inner conflict driving the action. The rest of the chapters can dive deeper into the investigation, flashbacks of Rachel's past actions, intense courtroom confrontations, and surprising twists. The hidden agenda. As the judge begins to build his case against Rachel, a mysterious figure lurks in the shadows. Detective David Monroe, a former partner of Rachel's, has been secretly investigating her for months. He's known about her corruption for years, but needed the final piece of evidence to bring her down. With the help of an undercover informant, David has gathered everything needed to destroy her career. As he watches the court proceedings, he knows that his moment is fast approaching. But Rachel, despite the mounting evidence, begins to fight back, pulling strings in an attempt to discredit David. The secret deal. Rachel's attorney, a skilled but morally ambiguous lawyer named Frank Adams, begins to question the integrity of the case. He knows that Rachel is guilty, but he's also aware of how much power she holds. Frank suggests a secret deal. Rachel's guilty plea in exchange for a reduced sentence. But Rachel refuses. She isn't ready to give up just yet. As Frank tries to convince her, Rachel reflects on her past, her rise to power within the police force, and the dark choices she made to get to where she is. But the deeper she sinks into this web of deceit, the more desperate she becomes to escape. The whispered secrets. As Rachel's world crumbles, whispers of her crimes spread throughout the courthouse. Witnesses come forward, some with first-hand accounts of her illegal activities, others with stories of how Rachel threatened and manipulated those who tried to expose her. The prosecutor, a sharp and relentless woman named Carla Morgan, is determined to bring Rachel down. The pressure builds, and Rachel begins to feel the walls close in. She starts to suspect that someone in her inner circle has betrayed her, feeding information to the authorities. Her paranoia grows as she tries to figure out who she can trust. The betrayal. The pressure finally becomes too much for Rachel. Late one night, she receives an anonymous message. "You're finished. We know everything." Her heart races as she tries to figure out who could have turned on her. It doesn't take long before she realizes that Detective Monroe was behind the entire operation. The betrayal cuts deep, but Rachel is not one to back down. She begins to plot her next move, desperate to regain control of the situation. But her thoughts are interrupted when she receives a call from Frank Adams, warning her that the judge is about to make a bold move in the courtroom. A turning point. In court, Judge Malcolm Daniels begins to turn up the heat. He's no longer just a neutral figure. His anger and frustration with the corruption in the system are palpable. With each new piece of evidence, his conviction grows stronger. He holds up a photograph of Rachel meeting with a notorious criminal figure, a key player in the syndicate she's been working with. The courtroom falls silent. Rachel, trying to maintain her composure, suddenly feels the weight of her actions crashing down on her. The judge calls for a recess, and Rachel is left alone in the courtroom, grappling with the reality that her fate is sealed. The confession. As the recess ends, Rachel makes a bold decision. She stands up in the middle of the courtroom and demands to speak. The judge allows her to address the court, and Rachel, with tears in her eyes, begins to confess her crimes. She speaks of her early days on the force, how she was initially idealistic, but eventually gave in to the temptation of power and money. Her confession shocks the courtroom, but it's clear that she's not just admitting guilt. She's also trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. She begs for leniency, claiming that her actions were driven by the fear of losing everything. The unexpected twist. Just when everyone thought Rachel's confession would end the trial, an unexpected twist occurs. A new witness comes forward, someone Rachel thought she could trust, her former partner, Detective Monroe. He steps up to the stand, and as he speaks, he reveals shocking new details about Rachel's involvement in a string of unsolved murders. His testimony is damning, and it becomes clear that Rachel's corruption runs far deeper than anyone could have imagined. The judge, visibly enraged, calls for immediate action. Rachel's world is spinning out of control, and now it's not just her career that's on the line, it's her life. The plot unfolds. The prosecution's case against Rachel continues to gain momentum. Detective Monroe's testimony is just the beginning, as more and more evidence surfaces. Surveillance footage, wiretap recordings, and even testimonies from former criminals she had worked with paint a picture of a woman who used her position of power to control and manipulate. As the courtroom drama intensifies, Rachel's once unshakable confidence begins to fade. Her defense team, scrambling to keep her out of prison, tries to discredit the evidence, but it's becoming clear that Rachel is no longer in control of the situation. The shadow in the courtroom. Rachel's paranoia reaches new heights as she notices an unfamiliar face in the courtroom. A man, seated in the back row, is watching her closely. His presence unsettles her, and she can't shake the feeling that he's somehow connected to the case. Desperate to maintain some semblance of power, Rachel demands to know who he is, but no one answers. Meanwhile, Judge Daniels remains resolute, determined to see justice done. As Rachel's mind races, she begins to suspect that the mysterious man might be linked to someone from her past, someone she had betrayed long ago. The final countdown. With the trial reaching its final stages, Rachel realizes that the end is near. The evidence against her is irrefutable, and the witnesses' testimonies are too powerful to be ignored. As the judge prepares to issue his verdict, Rachel's world crumbles. She begins to wonder if it was all worth it. The power, the money, the manipulation. The courtroom buzzes with anticipation, and Rachel's anxiety grows with every passing second. The clock ticks down, and she's left wondering what her future will hold when the gavel finally falls. The verdict. The judge steps forward and addresses the courtroom. His voice is calm but unwavering as he announces the verdict. Rachel Stone is guilty of all charges. The courtroom erupts into chaos, and Rachel's knees buckle beneath her. The weight of the conviction is too much for her to bear. As she's led away in handcuffs, Rachel reflects on how far she's fallen, from a respected detective to a criminal sentenced to prison. But as the doors of the courtroom close behind her, she vows that this is not the end. Somehow, some way, she will find a way to escape this fate. As Rachel sits in the holding cell awaiting her transport to prison, she realizes that her conviction isn't the end. It's the beginning of her battle for survival. She begins to plot her escape, her mind working overtime, recalling everything she knows about the facility. She knows that she has to act fast, before the weight of her sentence completely breaks her. It's not just her reputation at stake anymore, it's her life. Over the years, Rachel had made powerful enemies, but she had also cultivated allies. With nothing left to lose, she calls in a favor from an old contact, someone she's used in the past to get out of tight spots. As she waits for a response, the clock ticks down on her dwindling chances for freedom. A cold reception. Upon arrival at the high-security prison, Rachel is met with the cold indifference of the inmates. She quickly realizes that life behind bars is not what she expected. She thought her status as a former cop would earn her some respect, but instead, it makes her a target. The prisoners don't care about her past or her connections. To them, she's just another inmate. But Rachel isn't the type to back down. As she moves through the prison, she starts to assess her surroundings, looking for anyone who might be able to help her execute her escape plan. Every day is a game of survival, and Rachel is determined to win. Rachel's escape plan is moving forward, but she's not the only one working behind the scenes. Detective Monroe, who had been instrumental in exposing her, is now dealing with his own demons. He begins to have second thoughts about his role in Rachel's downfall. What began as a pursuit of justice has evolved into a personal vendetta. He starts receiving anonymous threats, warning him to back off before his own secrets come to light. Monroe knows that he's in just as much danger as Rachel, but he can't stop now. As he faces mounting pressure from all sides, he begins to question his loyalty to the system that put him in this position. At the same time, Rachel, still unaware of Monroe's internal conflict, continues to prepare for her next move. The deal with the devil. Back in prison, Rachel's old contact finally reaches out to her. He offers her a way out, but it comes at a steep price. In exchange for her freedom, Rachel must do a job for a powerful underground figure who controls the prison's operations. The offer is tempting, but Rachel knows she's walking a fine line. She agrees to the deal, fully aware that once she steps into the world of crime once again, there may be no turning back. As Rachel starts to navigate her new life in the prison's underworld, she begins to form alliances with dangerous inmates who share her vision of escape. But with every move, the stakes get higher, and Rachel must decide how far she's willing to go to reclaim her freedom. The mastermind, Rachel's plan, takes shape as she gains the trust of key inmates within the prison. Her deal with the underground figure forces her to do things she never thought she would, but she's determined to regain her freedom at any cost. She begins organizing a breakout, carefully mapping out every step and anticipating every obstacle. Her mind races as she studies the prison's layout, guards' routines, and potential blind spots. The clock is ticking, and every move must be precise. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, Monroe is closing in on a new lead. He's determined to prevent Rachel from escaping. But as he gets closer, he starts to realize that he might be walking into a trap of his own making. The countdown begins. The days leading up to Rachel's planned escape are filled with tension. She moves cautiously, gathering supplies and preparing the prisoners who will help her in the breakout. Meanwhile, the prison's warden, a strict and vigilant woman named Warden Green, begins to suspect that something is amiss. Her instincts tell her that Rachel is planning something big, but she doesn't know what it is. Green doubles down on her efforts to keep the prison secure, tightening security and making surprise checks. The heightened surveillance puts Rachel on edge, but it also forces her to think faster and more carefully. With Monroe closing in, time is running out. A reluctant alliance. As Rachel continues to prepare for her escape, she forms an unlikely alliance with another inmate named Maria, a seasoned con who has spent years inside. Maria has connections on the outside, and she offers Rachel a way to contact her people to help facilitate the breakout. However, Maria warns Rachel that she can't be trusted completely. Everyone has their own agenda in prison. But Rachel has little choice. She needs Maria's help to get out. The two women make a pact to help each other, but both are playing their own game. As the escape plan takes shape, Rachel begins to wonder if she can truly trust anyone anymore. The final preparations. The day of the escape has arrived, and Rachel is ready. She spent months preparing for this moment, and now it's time to execute her plan. Everything hinges on a single night, when the prison's security will be at its weakest. Rachel, Maria, and their fellow conspirators move into position, knowing that the slightest mistake could lead to their capture or worse. As the hours tick down, Rachel feels the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. The life she's about to leave behind has been full of lies, betrayal, and violence. But it's all she knows. She's about to gamble everything for a second chance at freedom. The Great Escape. The night of the escape unfolds like a meticulously planned heist. Rachel and the inmates move swiftly and quietly, using their knowledge of the prison's weaknesses to navigate the complex system of walls, gates, and security checkpoints. As they make their way toward the exit, Rachel can't help but feel a rush of adrenaline. She's never been more alive. But just as they reach the final gate, an unexpected alarm sounds. The prison goes into lockdown. Monroe, who has been watching Rachel from a distance, realizes that something is wrong. He races toward the prison, determined to stop her. The breakout turns into a high-stakes race against time, and Rachel knows that failure is not an option. With the alarm blaring and security scrambling to contain the breach, Rachel and her allies make a run for it. They burst through the final gate, only to be confronted by a squad of armed guards. A tense standoff ensues as Rachel and her group try to make their escape into the night. Monroe, who has arrived just in time, is caught in the middle of the action. His loyalties are tested as he faces off against the woman he once worked alongside, the woman he helped bring down. In a split-second decision, Monroe hesitates, allowing Rachel to make a run for it. The chase is on, and the battle for freedom is far from over. The betrayal within. As Rachel races through the dark streets, adrenaline fueling her every step, she realizes something is off. One of her allies, a man named Jake, is acting strangely. He was supposed to meet her at the designated spot, but he's nowhere to be found. As Rachel waits, she gets a chilling call. Jake has betrayed her. He tipped off the authorities about the escape plan, and now the police are closing in on her position. Rachel's heart sinks. She can't trust anyone. She feels the weight of every decision she's made, knowing that Jake's betrayal could mean the end of her freedom. With the police in pursuit, Rachel has no choice but to go deeper into hiding. In the aftermath of the escape, Rachel disappears into the shadows, trying to lay low. She reaches out to old contacts, but trust is in short supply. As the days pass, she becomes a ghost, always on the move, always looking over her shoulder. Monroe, now fully aware that Rachel has escaped, becomes obsessed with capturing her. His pursuit of her is relentless, fueled not only by his desire for justice, but by his own personal conflict. The man he once respected is now a fugitive. Monroe wonders how much of this chase is about justice and how much is about his own need for closure. But Rachel is clever, and she's always one step ahead. The alliance shattered. As Rachel seeks refuge in a small, remote town, she comes across a group of people who at first seem like a potential source of help. They are sympathetic to her cause, and for a while, she feels like she might be able to rebuild some form of trust. But just as quickly as she begins to settle, she discovers that one of them is working with the authorities. The truth hits Rachel hard. Her past, her decisions, have caught up with her. She can't escape it. Not now, not ever. Her enemies are everywhere, even in the places where she thought she'd find safety. The alliance she'd tried to build is shattered, leaving her with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. The ticking clock, Rachel's resources are running thin. She is forced to keep moving, never staying in one place for too long. The authorities have issued an all-points bulletin for her capture, and Monroe is now coordinating with federal agents to track her down. The walls are closing in, and Rachel knows that it's only a matter of time before she's cornered. Her mind races as she tries to figure out a way to disappear completely, to escape the relentless manhunt that's consuming her. But every move she makes seems to bring Monroe and the police closer to finding her. The ticking clock is her constant companion, and the pressure is beginning to crack her resolve. The hidden safe house. Desperate, Rachel contacts a former associate, a hacker named Leo, who owes her a favor from years ago. He provides her with the location of a hidden safe house, a place where she can lay low for a while and regroup. The safe house is located in an isolated cabin in the woods, far from the watchful eyes of law enforcement. Rachel arrives, exhausted and on edge, but she feels a sense of relief, knowing she has a temporary haven. As she begins to plan her next steps, Rachel's paranoia grows. She knows that Monroe is relentless, and if he's not already on her trail, he will be soon. The clock is ticking again. The unexpected visitor. As Rachel settles into the cabin, she begins to hear noises outside, twigs snapping, footsteps in the distance. Her instincts tell her that someone is coming for her. She grabs a gun, ready to defend herself. But to her shock, it's not the police, it's Monroe. The confrontation is inevitable, and both Rachel and Monroe know this. Monroe stands at the door, his face hard with determination. He's been tracking her for days, but something is different now. There's no longer any anger in his eyes, just a deep sense of regret. He offers Rachel a choice: surrender, or he will bring her down, no matter the cost. Rachel hesitates, weighing her options, but she knows that her time is running out. The standoff inside the cabin, a tense standoff, unfolds. Monroe holds his ground, and Rachel holds her gun steady, unsure of what to do next. The weight of their past, their shared history, hangs heavily in the air. Monroe knows that capturing Rachel is his duty, but a part of him wonders if he's making the right choice. Rachel, on the other hand, sees Monroe's internal struggle as an opportunity. She knows that if she can manipulate him, she can make her escape once again. The standoff lasts for what feels like hours, each of them sizing the other up, waiting for the other to make the first move. Finally, Rachel speaks. "You know I won't go back to prison." Monroe's expression hardens, but he doesn't move. The tension builds to a breaking point. The escape within the escape. In a flash, Rachel takes action. She darts to the side, making a run for it. Monroe fires a warning shot, but it misses. Rachel bolts out of the cabin, sprinting into the dense woods. Monroe chases after her, his footsteps pounding the ground as he closes in. But Rachel is quick, using her knowledge of the terrain to stay just out of reach. She knows this forest well. This is her advantage. As she weaves through the trees, she hears Monroe calling her name, but she doesn't stop. The chase is on once again, and Rachel is determined to lose him for good. Chapter 34. The Mysterious Benefactor. Rachel continues to run, feeling the cold night air biting at her skin. But as she pushes forward, she hears an unexpected sound, a car engine. She looks up to see a black SUV parked at the edge of the forest, its headlights off. The figure inside gestures for her to approach. It's an unfamiliar face, but Rachel instinctively knows that this person is there to help. She hesitates for a moment, but then makes a snap decision. She races toward the vehicle, slipping inside just as Monroe's voice echoes through the trees. The car speeds off, and Rachel takes a deep breath, knowing that this mysterious benefactor has just given her a second chance at life. The double cross. As the SUV speeds away from the forest, Rachel begins to relax, grateful for the unexpected rescue. But just as she starts to let her guard down, the driver turns to her with a cold smile. "You really thought we were here to help you?" the driver asks. Rachel's heart sinks as the realization hits. This is no rescue. This is a double cross. The driver is working with Monroe, and now Rachel is being handed over to him on a silver platter. Before she can react, the driver pulls a gun on her, and everything goes black. The dark deal. Rachel wakes up in a dimly lit room, her hands bound to a chair. She struggles to make sense of what's happening. The car's abrupt stop and the gunman's betrayal are now just a distant memory. As her vision clears, she sees a familiar face, Monroe. His presence sends a chill down her spine. He stands across from her, his expression unreadable. "You thought you could escape," he says coldly, "but you're still a criminal." Rachel glares at him, defiant. She knows that this is the moment where she either crumbles or fights with everything she has left. Monroe starts to explain that her escape was part of a bigger game, one that involves both of them in ways neither of them anticipated. Rachel listens intently as Monroe outlines the situation. A shadowy organization, more powerful than either of them, has been manipulating both Rachel and Monroe from the start. They were pawns in a much larger operation, and their roles had been scripted long ago. Monroe reveals that he was never in control of the investigation. Someone else had been pulling his strings all along. The weight of the truth crashes down on Rachel. She was never just trying to escape the law. She was running from a much more dangerous force that had already decided her fate. She now has to decide, trust Monroe or continue to fight against him. The decision: Rachel is caught between a rock and a hard place. The betrayal stings, and the idea of working with Monroe again feels impossible. But there is a flicker of something in his eyes, something that tells her he's not the same man who relentlessly pursued her before. The stakes are higher than ever. She weighs the options: join forces with Monroe and expose the organization pulling the strings, or go it alone and risk everything. Monroe, sensing her hesitation, offers her a deal. If she cooperates, he promises to protect her from the people who are controlling everything. The thought of working with him again makes her skin crawl, but Rachel knows that if they don't take this chance, they'll both be consumed by the very forces they're up against. Rachel's heart races. She doesn't want to trust Monroe again. She's been betrayed too many times. But she has no other choice. She finally nods, signaling her reluctant agreement. "Fine. I'll work with you," she says, her voice sharp. Monroe unties her hands and helps her to her feet. The road ahead is uncertain, but they now share a common enemy. The two of them leave the room, stepping into the unknown. Rachel is more determined than ever to destroy the organization that's been playing them both for fools. The gathering storm. Rachel and Monroe make plans to uncover the dark truth behind the organization that has manipulated their lives. They know that this won't be easy. They'll have to navigate a treacherous world of lies, deceit, and betrayal. Monroe shares what little intel he has, and Rachel uses her knowledge of the underground world to help them figure out who is behind it all. The two of them make an unlikely team, but together they begin to piece together the puzzle. Monroe contacts an old informant who might have information that could expose the organization. The tension in the air is palpable. They are on the brink of something big, but they also know the risks of getting too close to the truth. The informant, a hacker who has been hiding in the shadows, agrees to meet with them. Monroe and Rachel set up a meeting in a secluded area, their nerves on edge. The hacker gives them a piece of vital information, a list of key players within the organization. But it's not enough. Rachel senses that the hacker is holding back, afraid to say too much. She knows they can't trust anyone completely in this world of deception. The meeting ends abruptly when the sound of sirens signals that they've been compromised. Monroe and Rachel run, with the weight of the world on their shoulders. They've uncovered something, but it's only the beginning of the storm that's about to hit. The first move, Rachel and Monroe realize that they've only scratched the surface of a much larger conspiracy. They decide to go after one of the names on the list, the first key player they can track down. This individual, a high-ranking member of the organization, is rumored to have ties to powerful politicians and businessmen. Monroe uses his old contacts to gather intel on the target, while Rachel prepares herself for the inevitable confrontation. As they move closer to their goal, the danger intensifies. The closer they get to the heart of the conspiracy, the more enemies they make. Rachel knows that every step they take brings them closer to the truth, but also closer to death. The plan is set in motion, and Rachel and Monroe stake out their target's mansion. They wait for the right moment to strike, knowing that timing is everything. As the hours pass, Rachel can feel the pressure mounting. This is their first big move, and it has to be flawless. She can't afford any mistakes. Monroe watches her carefully, sensing her anxiety. "We do this together, or we don't do it at all," he says, his voice steady. Rachel nods, knowing that if they fail, it won't just be their lives at stake, it will be the beginning of the end for both of them. The night of the heist arrives, and Rachel and Monroe prepare to infiltrate the mansion. They're armed, ready, and determined to get the information they need. The mansion is heavily guarded, but Rachel and Monroe are skilled enough to slip past the security systems. They make their way through the mansion, silently moving from room to room. Every corner is a potential trap, and every sound makes them tense. They finally reach the office where the files are kept, but just as they're about to open the safe, a noise echoes down the hallway. Monroe's heart races. Someone is coming. They have seconds to act. In a split second, Rachel takes charge. She pushes Monroe toward the window, signaling that they need to escape before they're caught. The files they came for are within reach, but their survival is more important. They leap out of the window and disappear into the night, narrowly avoiding capture. As they regroup, they realize that they've made a crucial mistake. The files they took were not what they expected. Instead, they've uncovered a deeper conspiracy, one that ties them directly to the heart of the criminal network they've been fighting against. The stakes just got higher, and the game is far from over. As Rachel and Monroe flee from the mansion, the weight of the files they've stolen presses on their minds. They can't read them right away, but they know this is a crucial lead. In a safe house they've rented in a quiet, anonymous neighborhood, Rachel begins to go through the papers. What they find shocks them to their core. The criminal organization they've been chasing is connected to several high-profile figures, including politicians, corporate CEOs, and even law enforcement officials. Monroe's face hardens as he reads the names. He's a cop, and the idea that his colleagues could be involved in this web of corruption is unbearable. Rachel can see the conflict in Monroe's eyes. He's torn between his duty and his moral compass. "What do we do now?" Rachel asks. Monroe clenches his fists. "We go after them. Every last one of them," he replies, his voice filled with a mix of anger and resolve. The files reveal not just the names of the criminals, but also intricate plans to manipulate political elections, rig corporate deals, and corrupt the judicial system. They are dealing with a far-reaching conspiracy that extends into every corner of society. This isn't just about Rachel's freedom anymore. It's about exposing a system built on lies, power, and manipulation. Rachel understands that they are now entangled in a much bigger game. They are no longer just fugitives. They are freedom fighters. But with every step they take, the risk increases. The organization will stop at nothing to protect itself, and Monroe's past as a cop may make him a target. The stakes are higher than ever, and every decision they make from here on out could determine whether they live or die. After hours of analyzing the stolen files, Rachel and Monroe devise a plan to expose the corruption within the organization. The next target is a powerful senator who has been using his influence to protect the criminal enterprise. They decide to confront him directly, using his own arrogance and desire for control against him. Monroe's old connections give them access to the senator's private office, a place where secrets are made and deals are struck. The tension is thick as they prepare for the confrontation. This is their chance to hit the organization where it hurts, to take down one of its key players. Rachel knows that getting close to the senator will be risky. He is paranoid and well protected, but Monroe assures her they can do it. They need to be quick, efficient, and most importantly, they need to stay ahead of the game. As they enter the senator's office, they find themselves surrounded by expensive artifacts and a sense of old-world power. But Rachel's focus is on the man in the corner of the room, speaking on the phone. The senator doesn't know it yet, but he's about to be exposed. Monroe and Rachel silently move through the shadows, their hearts pounding. The senator's conversation is heated, full of threats and veiled promises. Rachel's instincts tell her that he's not just a figurehead in the organization, he's deeply entrenched. She can almost hear the gears turning in her head. This man holds the key to unlocking the entire operation. It's time to make their move, but just as they prepare to confront him, an unexpected interruption shakes everything to the core. The unexpected interruption. Just as Rachel and Monroe are about to approach the senator, the door bursts open. Armed guards rush in, their eyes scanning the room. The senator's voice falters as he turns around, realizing he's been set up. In that instant, Rachel knows they've been compromised. A trap has been sprung. Monroe's expression hardens. "We need to get out of here now," he shouts, grabbing Rachel's arm. The guards advance, but Monroe is ready. He pulls out his gun and fires a warning shot. Chaos erupts in the room as the senator dives for cover. Monroe and Rachel sprint toward the back exit, narrowly avoiding a barrage of bullets. They race down a dark hallway, their breath coming in quick gasps. Behind them, they hear the sound of footsteps pounding the floor as the guards pursue them. Monroe takes the lead, guiding Rachel through the maze of hallways. Rachel's mind races as they turn corners and take stairs 2 at a time. She knows that this is their last chance to escape, but the walls are closing in fast. The only way out is through the front gates, but the guards are blocking the path. They have no choice but to fight their way through. As they near the exit, Monroe shouts at Rachel to go first. He covers her as she runs toward the gates, her heart pounding in her chest. Just as she reaches the gates, a bullet grazes her arm. She winces in pain but pushes through. They burst through the gates and into the night, breathless and exhausted. The chase isn't over, but they've survived for now. As they escape into the shadows, Rachel knows that this fight is far from over. They've made enemies tonight, and those enemies won't stop until they're dead. The plan to expose. Back in the safety of a secluded hideout, Rachel and Monroe assess the damage. Their narrow escape from the senator's mansion has made them even more determined to take down the organization. The files they've gathered are crucial, but they need more, something concrete to bring the entire operation crashing down. They decide to go after one of the top lieutenants within the organization, a man known as Victor Kane. He is ruthless, calculating, and untouchable. Until now. With the evidence they've uncovered, Rachel and Monroe believe that they can finally expose the criminal network and bring it to its knees. Monroe takes the lead, making plans to infiltrate Kane's compound. Rachel knows that this will be the most dangerous mission yet. Kane is not someone who can be easily taken down. He has his own private army, and he doesn't trust anyone. But Monroe is confident that they can get to him. They have to. For Rachel, this is no longer just about survival. It's about justice. The organization has taken so much from her, and she's ready to take it all back. They begin to set up a strategy, using every resource at their disposal. Monroe reaches out to old informants, while Rachel focuses on hacking into Kane's communication network. The pieces are falling into place. But just as they think they've got it figured out, they receive an unexpected visit, someone from their past, someone who could change everything. The return of a ghost. The door to their hideout creaks open, and Rachel spins around, her instincts kicking in. The last thing she expects is for the figure standing in the doorway to be none other than Detective Blake, a former ally who vanished after their last operation together. His eyes are hard, and the lines on his face have deepened with time, but there's a familiar intensity in his gaze. Monroe's face tightens. "What the hell are you doing here?" he growls, stepping toward Blake, his posture defensive. But Blake raises his hands, signaling that he's not here to fight. "I'm not here to make trouble," Blake says calmly. "I've been tracking the organization for years. I know what you're up against. You can't do this alone anymore." Rachel and Monroe exchange glances. It's hard to trust anyone in this game, especially someone who disappeared without a trace. Blake's sudden return, however, can't be ignored. He holds valuable knowledge about the inner workings of the organization and its most dangerous players. He could be the ally they need, or he could be setting them up for another betrayal. Blake pulls out a set of files, similar to the ones Rachel and Monroe have, and places them on the table. "I've got intel on Victor Kane. He's planning a massive operation that will change the game forever. If we don't stop him, the entire country is at risk." Blake's words hit like a punch to the gut. Kane is more powerful than they thought, and now they have to act fast. Rachel nods slowly, her decision made. "We work together," she says. "But if you're lying to us, I'll end you." The infiltration plan. Blake's intel proves invaluable. With his help, Rachel and Monroe finally have a solid plan to infiltrate Victor Kane's compound. The stakes couldn't be higher. If they're caught, it's not just their lives at risk, it's the entire mission. The compound is a fortress, heavily guarded with state-of-the-art security systems and armed mercenaries. Blake has a contact who can disable the security systems temporarily, but it's a one-time shot. Once the systems go down, they have less than an hour to get in, gather evidence, and get out. If they fail, they'll be walking into a death trap. Rachel feels the weight of the plan. It's a risky move, and everything hinges on precise timing. Monroe's anxiety is palpable as they prepare for the mission. "This is it. If we fail here, it's over," he warns. Rachel locks eyes with him, her expression determined. "We've come this far, Monroe. We don't stop now." Blake looks between them, nodding in agreement. "We go in together. We fight together. We come out together," he says. The three of them set their minds on the task at hand. There's no turning back now. As the night of the infiltration arrives, the air is thick with tension. Blake's contact disables the security system just as planned, and Rachel, Monroe, and Blake make their way toward the compound. They move quickly and quietly, relying on their skills to avoid detection. But as they near the entrance, Rachel hears something that sends a chill down her spine. The sound of footsteps behind them. They're not alone. Someone else is here, someone who's tracking their every move. The betrayers reveal. Rachel's heart pounds in her chest as she signals for the others to stop. The footsteps grow louder, and they quickly duck behind a large pile of crates. Trying to hide in the shadows, Monroe's hand instinctively reaches for his weapon, but Blake holds up a hand. "Wait," he whispers. The footsteps draw closer, and then, just as Rachel is about to spring into action, a voice calls out. "You really thought you could sneak past me?" Rachel freezes, recognizing the voice instantly. It's Caleb, a former member of her crew who betrayed them months ago. She had thought he was dead. But there he is, standing in front of them, grinning like a predator who's caught its prey. "I never thought you'd make it this far," Caleb sneers. "But now that you're here, I can finally put an end to this charade." Rachel's blood runs cold. She never saw this coming. Caleb was always an opportunist. But to find him here, working with Kane, it changes everything. Monroe steps forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You're with Kane?" Caleb's smile widens. "Of course, you didn't think I was going to let you take him down, did you?" Rachel knows they've been double-crossed, and this encounter could mean the end of their mission, but she's not going down without a fight. "We're taking him down, Caleb, and if you stand in our way, we'll take you down too." The tension in the air is thick, and for a moment, it feels like time itself has stopped. They're at a crossroads, but Rachel's resolve hardens. They're not backing down now. The standoff between Rachel, Monroe, Blake, and Caleb is tense. Caleb's smirk never fades, but his eyes flicker with something darker, fear. He knows what's at stake here, and he's prepared to do whatever it takes to stop them. Monroe, his gun aimed at Caleb, speaks in a voice that cuts through the tension. "You've sold your soul, Caleb. You can't win. This ends tonight." Caleb laughs, a bitter, hollow sound. "You think you've won, Monroe? You think any of us are in control?" he spits. "Kane has already won. You're just playing into his hands." Rachel's mind races. She knows Caleb is trying to play psychological games with them, but they can't afford to lose focus. She motions to Blake, signaling him to flank Caleb from the side while she distracts him. The plan is risky, but they have no choice. In one swift movement, Rachel charges at Caleb, knocking him off balance. Monroe follows through, pressing the barrel of his gun into Caleb's side. "It's over," Monroe mutters, his voice full of cold determination. Caleb struggles, but the fight is gone from him. He knows he's beaten. As they bind Caleb and prepare to move forward, the realization hits them all. The organization is more dangerous than they imagined, but they now have a piece of the puzzle. The path to Kane is clearer, but the real fight is only just beginning. The tightening noose. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake leave Caleb tied up in a secure room. They're running out of time. With the senator exposed and Caleb's betrayal hanging over them, they know the next phase of their plan must be executed flawlessly. They move quickly, gathering the intel they've secured and analyzing their next move. Blake looks over the files, nodding. "This is it. We've got a clear shot at Kane, but we need to act fast. He's moving, and if we don't get to him first, we risk losing everything." Rachel's mind spins with calculations. They now have enough to bring down Kane, but they need to make sure they can take him by surprise. Monroe's face is grim as he pulls out a map of Kane's compound. "We hit him hard and fast. No room for error. We go in, get the evidence, and get out." It's a risky move, and Rachel knows that every decision they make could be their last. But it's the only choice they have. They've come too far to turn back now. They prepare for the final confrontation. The weapons are loaded, the plan is set, and they're ready to face whatever comes their way. But Rachel can't shake the feeling that they're walking into a trap. Kane is a master strategist, and they've underestimated him before. She tells herself that they have no other option. They can't afford to fail. The team moves out under the cover of darkness, their hearts pounding in their chests. Every step takes them closer to the compound, and every step could be their last. But this is their moment, the moment they've been working for. And Rachel knows that this fight, the final battle, will determine not only their survival, but the fate of the entire criminal empire they've been hunting. The heart of the beast. As they approach the heavily fortified compound, Rachel can feel the weight of their mission pressing down on her. The plan is simple: infiltrate, expose Kane, and leave before anyone realizes they've been there. But nothing is ever simple when it comes to Victor Kane. The gates are locked, and the security system is still up. Blake's contact had warned them that disabling it temporarily would only work once, and they're counting on that one shot. The tension is palpable as they move into position. Monroe, always the first to charge in, signals for Rachel to stay back while he takes the lead. She nods but can't help but feel that this time, it's different. This time, it feels like they're walking into a lion's den. They sneak past the guards, staying in the shadows and avoiding the cameras. Rachel's heart races as they make their way toward the inner sanctum, where Kane is rumored to be. Everything goes according to plan until they reach the main hall. The security system flickers and fails, as expected, but just as they begin to move forward, an alarm blares. It's a deafening sound, and Rachel's heart stops. The entire compound is on high alert. Monroe curses under his breath. "We've been made," he says, and they all know what that means. Their window of opportunity is closing fast. Rachel's instincts kick in. "We fight our way through," she says. They have no choice now. The battle for survival begins as they sprint through the compound, facing off against armed mercenaries. The sounds of gunfire echo in the halls, and Rachel knows that this fight will be like no other. Kane is just ahead, but so are the guards who will do anything to protect him. There's no turning back now. The battle within. The chaos inside the compound is unlike anything Rachel has ever experienced. The halls are filled with the deafening sounds of gunfire and shouts of anger. Monroe and Blake are at the front, pushing forward with unwavering determination. Rachel follows closely behind, her mind focused on the mission, but her heart racing in her chest. Every corner they turn could be their last, but they can't stop now. Rachel's thoughts race as they move through the compound, dodging bullets and narrowly avoiding traps set by Kane's men. Blake shoots one of the guards in the leg, dropping him to the ground. Monroe fires a warning shot, forcing another guard to take cover. The stakes are higher than ever. Rachel knows that Kane won't go down easily. He's prepared for this. But they're close. They're so close to taking him down. They reach a reinforced door that leads to the inner chamber. This is where Kane is hiding, surrounded by his most trusted lieutenants. Monroe slams his shoulder into the door, forcing it open with a loud crash. They charge in, guns raised, ready for the final showdown. Inside, Kane stands tall, a cruel smile on his face. "You think you can defeat me?" he sneers, his voice dripping with arrogance. But Rachel knows this is their moment. The end is in sight. The confrontation with Kane is intense. He's ruthless, firing back at them without hesitation. But Rachel, Monroe, and Blake are relentless. They move with precision, each one playing their part. Rachel can see the fear in Kane's eyes as his empire crumbles around him. It's finally over. The fall of the kingpin, Kane fights with the fury of a cornered animal, but it's clear to Rachel that he's losing. Every move he makes is met with resistance. Monroe's shots hit their mark, and Blake's tactical expertise forces Kane's men into retreat. For the first time in a long time, Rachel feels like they have the upper hand. But Kane isn't going down without a fight. His desperation is palpable as he scrambles for his gun, but it's too late. Rachel steps forward, her eyes cold and focused. "This is over, Kane," she says, her voice filled with authority. The man who once controlled so much now cowers in front of her, his power fading away like smoke. Kane's eyes dart around, looking for any escape, but there's none. The fight has been taken out of him. Monroe steps in, cuffing him with swift efficiency. As they walk out of the compound with Kane in tow, Rachel can't help but feel a surge of relief. It's done. The organization that has plagued them for so long is no more. The evidence they've gathered will bring down everyone involved. They've won. But as the sun begins to rise, Rachel knows the battle is over, but the war isn't. There's still work to be done. The pieces of the puzzle are finally in place, and now it's time for the world to know the truth. The final victory. Next chapters would continue with high action, suspense, and conclusion, wrapping up the journey of Rachel, Monroe, and Blake, exposing corruption at every level, and seeing their final confrontation lead to public revelations, trials, and justice served, with plot twists, character development, and final closure. Unmasking the conspiracy. The aftermath of Kane's capture sends shockwaves throughout the criminal underworld. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake now have more than just a victory. They have evidence that implicates not only Kane but several high-ranking officials who were pulling the strings from the shadows. The documents in their possession contain names of politicians, law enforcement officers, and businessmen who have been secretly working with Kane to maintain his empire. As Rachel pores over the files, she realizes just how deep the conspiracy goes. It's not just about one man. It's about a network of corrupt individuals who have been manipulating the system for years. The evidence they've gathered could bring down an entire government if it falls into the wrong hands. Blake is already making plans to secure the files, but Rachel knows that they can't trust anyone, not even their allies. If they want to make sure the truth comes to light, they have to handle this themselves. Monroe, ever the pragmatist, is worried about the consequences. "We're playing with fire," he warns. "If this gets out, we could be next. They'll come for us, Rachel." But Rachel's resolve is unshakable. "We can't back down now," she says, her voice firm. "The people need to know the truth. We've come too far to stop." Blake agrees, though his eyes betray a hint of doubt. They all know the risks, but they also know that this is their moment to change everything. As they prepare to leak the evidence to the press, they know they have to act quickly. The longer they wait, the more likely it is that someone will try to erase the files. The stakes are higher than ever, but the fire of justice is burning bright. The final confrontation is nearing, and nothing can stop them now. The unexpected betrayal. Just when they think they've outmaneuvered every threat, a new one emerges. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake are sitting in a safe house, strategizing their next move, when Blake receives a call that makes his face go pale. His voice shakes as he explains the situation to Rachel and Monroe. "It's Caleb," he says. "He's turned on us. He's working with the people we're trying to take down." Rachel's blood runs cold. Caleb had been a trusted ally, but now he's part of the very network they've been fighting against. The revelation hits like a ton of bricks. Caleb was always a wild card, but they had never imagined he would go so far as to betray them to the very people who wanted to see them dead. Blake explains that Caleb has been feeding information to Kane's remaining operatives, tipping them off about their movements. "We're not safe," Blake concludes. "If we don't do something fast, he'll destroy everything we've worked for." Monroe clenches his fists in anger. "I should have seen it coming. We've been too trusting." But Rachel knows that anger won't help them now. "We have to outsmart him," she says. "We've been playing their game this whole time. Now, we change the rules." The tension in the room is palpable as they come up with a plan to turn the tables on Caleb. It's a risky move, but they have no other choice. With the clock ticking, they set their plan in motion. They need to get to Caleb before he can do any more damage. They move quickly, using every skill they've honed over the years to track him down. The stakes have never been higher, and they can't afford any mistakes. The trap is set. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake are no strangers to danger, but this feels different. They know that Caleb will stop at nothing to protect himself and ensure their failure. Their plan is simple: lure him into a trap, expose him, and make him regret every decision that led him to betray them. But simplicity is often the hardest thing to achieve when dealing with someone as unpredictable as Caleb. The first step is to create a false trail. They plant false information about a key piece of evidence that could destroy the remaining members of Kane's network. Then, they wait. Rachel knows Caleb will bite. He's always been hungry for power and information, and this fake lead will be irresistible. But they can't afford to wait too long. If Caleb catches on to their game, it could be their last mistake. Days pass in tense silence as they monitor Caleb's every move. The safe house feels more like a cage than a sanctuary. Rachel's mind races, constantly running through the possible outcomes. She knows that Caleb won't fall for this trap easily. He's clever, But he's also arrogant, and that could be his downfall. Monroe keeps his head low, constantly checking their escape routes, while Blake stays in contact with their informants to keep track of Caleb's whereabouts. Finally, they get the break they've been waiting for. Caleb bites. He takes the bait and starts making moves toward the fake evidence. They follow him at a distance, knowing that this is their moment. They close in on him, setting up their ambush. It's a delicate balance between patience and action, but Rachel is confident they've got the upper hand. The next few hours will decide everything. The final confrontation. The trap is set, and Caleb walks straight into it. As Rachel, Monroe, and Blake close in on him, the tension builds. It's now or never. Caleb is the last piece of the puzzle, and once he's dealt with, the entire network can be exposed. The moment they've been working toward for months is finally here. The final confrontation is inevitable. Rachel watches from the shadows, her heart racing as Caleb enters the building they've prepared for the ambush. He's unaware of the trap closing in around him, and that's exactly how it should be. Monroe and Blake are in position, ready to strike. They've rehearsed this moment over and over again, and everything is lined up perfectly. Caleb's arrogance will be his downfall. As Caleb steps into the center of the room, Monroe and Blake move swiftly, surrounding him. "It's over, Caleb," Rachel says, stepping out from the shadows. Caleb freezes, realizing too late that he's been caught. "You think you've won?" He sneers. "You think I'm the one you need to worry about?" But Rachel can see the fear in his eyes. He knows the game is up. With the evidence they've gathered, and Caleb's confession, they now have everything they need to take down the entire organization. The fight is over, but the work is just beginning. Rachel looks at Monroe and Blake, a sense of finality washing over her. They've done it. The truth will finally come to light. The world shakes. As the news of Caleb's betrayal and Kane's downfall spreads, the world reacts. Media outlets are buzzing with the explosive revelations, and the public is in shock. The politicians and high-ranking officials who had been implicated scramble to control the damage. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake watch from a secure location as their plan unfolds. They know that exposing the full extent of the corruption will have far-reaching consequences, but they are ready for the fallout. Rachel can feel the weight of what they've accomplished, but it's mixed with a sense of unease. Even though they've taken down Kane and his network, the battle isn't truly over. As the media devours every detail of their investigation, Rachel realizes that the corrupt system they've uncovered is far from isolated. The rot goes deeper than they could have ever imagined. The true test is not just bringing down Kane's empire, it's dismantling the entire web of deceit that has been in place for decades. Blake's phone rings. It's a tip from one of their informants, warning them that there are still pieces of the puzzle they haven't yet uncovered. Some of the most powerful people involved have gone underground. "We're not done yet," Blake says grimly, hanging up. Monroe looks at Rachel with a mixture of determination and concern. "We have to finish this. No one's safe until the whole system is exposed." Rachel nods in agreement. There's no turning back now. The trio knows they need to stay ahead of their enemies. They've made powerful adversaries, and if they're not careful, those enemies will fight back with everything they have. The moment of victory is fleeting, and Rachel understands that the real battle, the battle for justice, is only just beginning. A dangerous alliance. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake are preparing for the next phase of their mission. Despite the massive victory of exposing Kane and Caleb, they know they still have a long road ahead. The true masterminds behind the corrupt system are still out there, pulling strings from behind the scenes. This time, they need to forge a dangerous alliance with those who have the power and influence to help them take down the remaining threats. Rachel reaches out to a former FBI agent who has connections to high-level government officials. The agent, Ethan, is reluctant at first, knowing that aligning with Rachel and her team could mean the end of his career. But as Rachel lays out the evidence they've gathered and the depth of the corruption they're facing, Ethan sees no other option. He agrees to help them, but his assistance comes with a price. His anonymity and his own safety must be guaranteed. With Ethan's help, they begin to piece together a network of allies who share their goal. These are people who have been working within the system for years, gathering intel, but have been too afraid to take action. Now, with the evidence Rachel has exposed, they finally have the leverage to force these people into action. But there's a catch. Some of them have their own agendas, and trusting them could lead to more betrayal. As Rachel weighs the risks, she knows that their mission has entered a new phase. They need to be careful, calculating every move to ensure their survival. The line between ally and enemy is becoming increasingly blurred, but they have no choice. This alliance is their last hope to bring down the remaining pieces of the corrupt system. The hidden enemy. The deeper Rachel and her team delve into the conspiracy, the more complicated it becomes. Despite the breakthrough they've made by securing allies within the system, new enemies keep emerging from unexpected places. One of the most troubling developments is the sudden disappearance of one of their key allies, Ethan. After agreeing to work with them, he vanishes without a trace. His disappearance sends a chill through the group as they begin to question who they can really trust. Monroe is immediately suspicious, and Blake urges caution. "We've been betrayed before. It's possible he was a plant," Blake says, eyeing their contacts with suspicion. Rachel, however, refuses to believe that Ethan would turn on them. She recalls the genuine concern in his voice during their last conversation. Still, the fact remains, Ethan is gone, and the remaining allies they've secured are now under threat. In the meantime, Rachel's team has become a target. They start receiving threatening messages and anonymous tips warning them to stop their investigation. It's clear that someone is monitoring their every move, and it's only a matter of time before they make their move. The tension grows as they prepare for an attack that could come from any direction. Rachel realizes that their enemies are getting desperate, and they're willing to go to any lengths to protect their power. Rachel's instincts tell her that Ethan's disappearance is no coincidence. She suspects that the people behind this have been watching them for longer than they know. The hidden enemy has revealed itself, and now they must fight not just for justice, but for their own survival. Time is running out, and Rachel is determined to get to the bottom of the mystery before it's too late. The web tightens. The walls seem to be closing in on Rachel, Monroe, and Blake. Every move they make is under surveillance, and the remaining conspirators are closing ranks. With Ethan still missing, they can't afford to make any mistakes. The danger has escalated, and now they're no longer just fighting for justice, they're fighting to stay alive. Rachel and Blake decide to take a more aggressive approach. They know that the conspirators have their own network of informants, so they take to the offensive, going after the people who might know more about Ethan's disappearance. Monroe, ever the strategist, plans their next move with precision, ensuring that they can get to the heart of the conspiracy before it consumes them all. Their investigation leads them to a shady businessman who is rumored to have connections to some of the highest-ranking officials still in the game. He's a key player in the network, and Rachel believes that he might know what happened to Ethan. They arrange a covert meeting, hoping to extract information without putting themselves in too much danger. But as they approach the meeting point, something feels off. The air is thick with tension, and Rachel can't shake the feeling that they're walking into a trap. As they step into the building, they're ambushed by a group of armed men. It's a violent confrontation that leaves Rachel's team fighting for their lives. With bullets flying and their escape routes cut off, they realize just how much danger they're in. The game has changed. The conspirators are willing to kill to protect their secrets, and Rachel knows they're running out of time. The ambush is chaotic. Bullets ricochet off the walls as Rachel, Monroe, and Blake scramble to find cover. The sudden attack takes them completely by surprise, but they're trained to react under pressure. Monroe pulls Rachel to the ground just as a bullet whizzes past them, embedding itself in the drywall. Blake returns fire, covering their escape route. It's a battle for their lives as they fight their way through the building, but the odds are stacked against them. Rachel's heart is pounding as she tries to think of their next move. They can't afford to stay in one place for too long. Every second counts. Monroe is already formulating an escape plan, directing Blake to cover their rear as they make their way to the back exit. "We have to split up," Monroe orders. It's the only way we'll survive. Rachel, take the side alley and head to the car. Blake and I will create a diversion. Rachel nods, her mind racing as she weighs the risks. They're outnumbered, and the enemies are closing in. As they move through the building, Rachel can hear the sound of footsteps chasing after them. She's running out of time. She knows that if she doesn't make it to the car quickly, they'll be trapped. She feels a surge of adrenaline as she pushes her body to its limits, darting through hallways and down staircases, heart racing with every step. When she finally bursts through the side door and spots the car, she lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. But there's no time to celebrate. She jumps into the driver's seat and slams the accelerator. Blake and Monroe are still inside, and Rachel's only hope is that they can make it out alive. She watches the rearview mirror, waiting for any sign of them, praying they'll get away in time. The car speeds down the street, and Rachel's mind is focused solely on getting them to safety. Her heart is still pounding, but now she's just praying that this isn't the beginning of the end. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake finally regroup at an abandoned warehouse, their temporary safe house. The air is heavy with tension as they catch their breath and assess their injuries. Monroe's face is bruised, and Blake has a cut on his arm. But it's Rachel who feels the weight of their situation the most. They're running out of options, and the ambush only proved how desperate their enemies have become. They can't trust anyone anymore, but there's one person left who might hold the key to their survival. Ethan. Rachel is restless, pacing back and forth. The disappearance of Ethan has weighed heavily on her mind, but she can't afford to let it consume her. She knows that if they're going to have any hope of taking down the rest of the corrupt system, they need Ethan's knowledge. But finding him will be no easy task. The more time passes, the more she fears that they're too late. Monroe is the first to speak. We can't keep running. We need to make a move, now. If Ethan's still out there, we need him. But if he's turned on us, we'll be making a grave mistake by going after him. Rachel knows he's right. They have to know what happened to him before they can proceed. We need to find out who's pulling the strings, Rachel says, her voice firm. If Ethan's still loyal to us, he'll have information that could take down the entire network. Blake agrees. We've lost a lot of ground in the last few days. We need to move quickly. Rachel looks at both of them, feeling the weight of their collective decision. We'll find Ethan, and we'll make sure he's either with us or against us, she declares. It's a risky move, but with no other leads, it's their only choice. They prepare to hit the streets once more, knowing that the clock is ticking. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake begin their search for Ethan, knowing that every moment counts. They start by revisiting the last known place where they had met with him, an old diner on the outskirts of the city. Rachel remembers the conversation vividly. Ethan had been hesitant to join them at first, but once the evidence was laid bare before him, he had agreed to help. What could have changed in such a short amount of time? The diner is eerily quiet when they arrive. Rachel scans the room for any sign of Ethan, but comes up empty. The place seems abandoned, though they know it's likely that their enemies have taken precautions to cover their tracks. Monroe heads toward the back alley while Blake checks the surrounding area. Rachel sits at the booth where she and Ethan had spoken, trying to recall any clues she might have missed. She feels like she's retracing their steps in a labyrinth that has no way out. Then, Rachel's eyes fall on a small piece of paper tucked beneath the edge of the table. It's a message written hastily in pen. They're watching. Get out. Her heart skips a beat as she reads the words. The note is from Ethan. It's the only sign she's had that he might still be alive and still trying to help. Her instincts tell her that they're getting closer to the truth. But danger is closing in on them faster than they can move. Rachel shows the note to Monroe and Blake. We need to leave. Now, she says urgently. They gather their things quickly, but the tension is palpable. Rachel knows they've uncovered something big, but the real question is, who is still watching and how long do they have before it's too late? The note from Ethan sends Rachel's team into overdrive. It's the first real lead they've had since his disappearance, and they need to act fast. Rachel's mind races as she tries to make sense of the message. They're watching. Get out. What does it mean? Who is watching? And why would Ethan leave such a cryptic warning if he wasn't trying to help? They decide to follow the trail left by Ethan, knowing that it's the only way to find him and to uncover the truth behind the conspiracy. Monroe takes the lead, using his connections to find out where Ethan might have gone. Blake starts making calls to their informants, trying to track down any recent activity that could be linked to Ethan. Meanwhile, Rachel can't shake the feeling that they're being followed. The streets seem empty, but she knows the danger is lurking just out of sight. As the days pass, they uncover a series of encrypted messages that Ethan had left for them. Each one is more revealing than the last, shedding light on the inner workings of the corrupt network. Rachel realizes that the conspiracy is even more far-reaching than they originally thought. Powerful people are involved, people who will stop at nothing to protect their interests. Ethan had been trying to get them to the next step, but his message had been intercepted. Now, they're facing a race against time. Rachel, Monroe, and Blake know that they're getting closer, but the closer they get, the more dangerous the game becomes. Every move they make puts them at greater risk. But Rachel won't back down now, not when the truth is within their grasp. As the search for Ethan intensifies, Rachel, Monroe, and Blake find themselves in uncharted territory. With every lead they follow, they realize they're up against more than just the corrupt officials. They're up against a system that is deeply entrenched and fiercely protected. But then, in a surprising turn of events, they receive an unexpected ally, a former member of Kane's inner circle who has had a change of heart. Her name is Isabella, and she's been working undercover for years, gathering evidence to take down the organization from within. Rachel is initially skeptical of her motives, but Isabella proves herself by offering critical information about Ethan's whereabouts. He's not just missing, Isabella explains. He's been taken, and I know where they're holding him. The revelation sends shockwaves through the team. Not only do they now have a lead on Ethan's location, but they also have a new ally, one with valuable inside knowledge. Isabella's help is a game changer, but Rachel is cautious. Why are you helping us, she asks. Isabella's answer is simple. Because what Kane did to you, he did to me too. I want revenge. Monroe and Blake exchange wary glances, but Rachel knows they can't afford to turn down help now. The risks are too great, and every moment counts. With Isabella's guidance, they begin to formulate a plan to rescue Ethan. It's a dangerous mission, but Rachel is more determined than ever. They've come this far, and they're not going to stop until they've brought down the entire corrupt system, once and for all. Rachel, Monroe, Blake, and Isabella move with urgency. Their plan to rescue Ethan is taking shape, but they all know it's going to be one of the most dangerous missions they've ever undertaken. Isabella provides them with critical intel. Ethan is being held at a secret facility deep in the outskirts of the city, one that's guarded by heavily armed personnel. It's a place that doesn't even appear on any official maps. The team prepares themselves for the worst, knowing they won't have a second chance. Monroe is the first to speak up. We need to move fast, and we need to be quiet. One wrong move, and we're done. Rachel nods in agreement, her focus sharpened by the gravity of the situation. They've been up against powerful enemies before, but this feels different. The stakes are higher, and if they fail, not only will they lose Ethan, but they'll be walking into a trap that could wipe them all out. They can't afford to be careless. They arrive at the facility's perimeter just after nightfall, and Rachel's heart begins to race. The area is eerily quiet, but there's a heavy presence of guards. The mission is delicate. Every step must be calculated. Blake and Monroe go first, moving like shadows, taking out the guards silently one by one. Isabella directs Rachel, giving her a clear path to the entrance where Ethan is being held. With her pulse pounding, Rachel slips inside, her breath steady, but her mind in overdrive. This is it, the moment they've been waiting for. Inside the facility, they navigate a maze of corridors, following Isabella's intel. Rachel's thoughts race. They're close now, but the closer they get, the more danger they face. It's not just Ethan's life on the line, it's the future of their entire mission. As they reach the holding cells, they prepare for the confrontation that will change everything. The tension in the air is palpable as Rachel and the team approach the holding cells. The facility is quieter now. The only sounds are the distant hum of machinery and their own breath. Rachel can feel her heart thumping in her chest, each beat louder than the last. They've come so far, but nothing is certain. They've been careful so far. But now they're about to confront the one person who could either save or destroy them. Ethan. As they move past the final corridor, they spot a guard at the entrance to the cell block. Monroe signals for Blake to take him out, and within seconds, the guard is down, silent as a whisper. The door to the cell block is just ahead, and Rachel feels the weight of the moment. Her hands are sweaty as she pulls the door open. Inside, the dim light reveals row after row of empty cells. But at the far end, there's one that holds someone familiar, Ethan. Rachel's breath catches in her throat as she sees him. He looks different, worn, bruised, and thinner than she remembers, but there's no mistaking him. Ethan. She hurries toward him, but before she can reach him, a voice echoes from the shadows. You shouldn't have come here. The sound freezes her in her tracks. It's Kane. Kane steps out from the shadows, flanked by armed guards. He's wearing a confident smirk, knowing he's caught them in a trap. You thought you could outsmart me? Kane's voice is cold and calculating. This is where it ends for all of you. Rachel feels a surge of anger, but she knows she has to stay calm. They didn't come this far to fail. It's time to turn the tables on him. The standoff is intense. Rachel, Monroe, Blake, and Isabella are surrounded, with Kane standing confidently before them, his guards ready to strike. The tension is thick, but Rachel's mind is racing, trying to come up with a plan. They've made it this far, but the trap Kane has laid out is far worse than anything they could have imagined. The walls are closing in, and there's no easy escape. You don't understand, Kane sneers, his eyes cold. This was never about the money or the power. This was about control. You think you're fighting for justice, but you're only a pawn in a much bigger game. His words hit Rachel like a punch to the gut. The truth is far more complex than she realized. Kane isn't just another corrupt official. He's part of something far bigger, a network that extends beyond anything they've encountered. It's a dangerous realization, but one that opens Rachel's eyes to the full scale of the battle they're facing. Kane, what do you want from us? Rachel demands, her voice steady. She can't afford to show weakness now. Kane's expression darkens. I want to end this, all of it, once and for all. And you're going to help me, he says, his voice chilling. He steps closer, his eyes narrowing. You're going to help me bring down the system you've been fighting against. Rachel can't believe what she's hearing. Kane is offering an alliance, but she knows better than to trust him. This is just another game, and Rachel refuses to play by his rules. Monroe steps forward, his voice low but firm. We're not working with you, Kane. We're taking you down. Blake and Isabella stand at the ready, their eyes locked on the enemy. Rachel feels the adrenaline surge through her. The battle is far from over, but she's not backing down now, not when they've come this far. The confrontation with Kane takes an unexpected turn. He steps back, his smirk widening as he motions for his guards to lower their weapons. You think you can defeat me? He says, his voice dripping with arrogance. I've already won. You're all too late. For a moment, Rachel feels a wave of doubt. How could they have miscalculated so badly? But then as Kane steps forward, his smug expression falters for just a second, and Rachel sees it. The hesitation, the fear. Before she can react, Isabella speaks up, her voice sharp and clear. He's lying, she says, her words cutting through the tension. Kane's been working for someone else all along. He's not the mastermind. You've been chasing the wrong person. Rachel's eyes snap to Isabella. What are you talking about? She demands. Isabella's gaze hardens. Kane was just a pawn. The real power lies elsewhere. The one pulling the strings is someone none of you suspected. Someone close to you. Rachel's mind reels as the implications sink in. Who could it be? As the truth unfolds, Rachel's world tilts. The betrayer was someone within their own circle. The one person they never thought they'd have to suspect. Someone they trusted completely. This revelation changes everything. The mission, their lives, their cause, it all hinges on this one shocking betrayal. Now they must confront the real enemy, and it's going to take everything they have to bring them down. With the revelation of the true mastermind, Rachel feels the weight of the moment. Kane is no longer the primary target. Now, they have to hunt down the person who's been pulling the strings all along. It's a race against time. The team quickly regroups, and the tension is palpable as they prepare for the final showdown. They track down the betrayer's location, a hidden compound tucked away in the mountains. It's a fortress, heavily guarded, but Rachel knows they can't let fear control them now. This is it, the final battle. As they approach the compound, Rachel looks around at Monroe, Blake, and Isabella, knowing that each of them has risked everything to get to this point. The stakes couldn't be higher. As they infiltrate the compound, they face fierce resistance. Gunfire erupts as they make their way deeper into the heart of the facility, and the sounds of chaos fill the air. Rachel's heart pounds in her chest as they close in on the betrayer. She knows this will be the hardest fight of their lives, but they've come too far to turn back now. This is their moment to take down the system once and for all. Finally, they reach the inner sanctum, where the betrayer awaits. The confrontation is brutal and intense. But in the end, Rachel and her team emerge victorious. The betrayer is exposed, and the corrupt system is dismantled. As Rachel looks around at the wreckage of their enemies, she knows one thing for certain. This fight was worth every sacrifice. A dimly lit courtroom bathed in cold, pale light filtering through tall, narrow windows. The air is thick with tension. Detective Rachel Stone stands in the witness box, her hands trembling slightly as she grips the wooden railing. Her sharp, calculating eyes dart across the room, scanning the faces of the jury, the judge, and the prosecutor. The judge, Malcolm Daniels, leans forward on his bench, his piercing gaze locked onto Rachel, his expression a mix of stern authority and simmering anger. The prosecutor, Carla Morgan, stands confidently, holding a folder of damning evidence, bank statements, wiretap transcripts, and photos of Rachel meeting with shadowy figures. In the background, the courtroom is packed with onlookers, their faces a mix of shock, curiosity, and disdain. A single photo of Rachel shaking hands with a notorious crime boss is projected on a screen, casting an eerie glow over the scene. The atmosphere is electric, every detail hinting at the unraveling of Rachel's carefully constructed life. Rachel's empire is crumbling. Can she outrun her past? Hit subscribe before the next twist leaves you breathless.